Today I'm in Mexico City and I'm gonna walk around neighborhoods and see if I find those areas that you see in Hollywood movies. You know those ones that look yellow and dusty, like there's a yellow filter over top? The ones where there's always guys in pickup trucks with machine guns? And the ones where it's just dusty desert towns with tumbleweeds? I'm gonna try to show you guys the real Mexico that Hollywood says is real. The whole point of this search is that Hollywood is feeding the drug war in Mexico. But they're not sending guns into Mexico. It's not that obvious. They're doing something a little more subtle, but just as damaging. They're fueling a war on perception. You see this yellow filter that they've been using for a long time now is to make Mexico look dirty, poor, and not a good place to be. But that to me is completely wrong. When you come to Mexico, and I'm talking about where real people live, you fall in love with it. Normal everyday things go on here, like people running or riding their bikes around town or around the city. This isn't a war zone where cartels run the streets, where it's a failed state. I hear people say this is a failed state all the time. And that just tells me you've never been here. And that's why I'm gonna take you to some normal neighborhood to show you what normal life in Mexico looks like. It's not what Hollywood tells you it is. Like most of Mexico is just normal people walking around, riding their bikes, jogging, see? It's not any failed state whatsoever. Like, of course there are bad places and dangerous places, but those are places that even Mexicans wouldn't even go visit. Why would you go there if you didn't know somebody? When Hollywood sits down to write a Mexican character, they usually write him as a bad guy. In 2022, nearly 60% of Mexican lead characters were scripted as criminals. It's like Hollywood believes that being Mexican is a job description for being a bad guy. And when Mexican children see this, they don't see doctors or lawyers or teachers. They see villains. They only see what the movies want them to see. They also lie about how Mexicans become successful and make all their money. In movies and TV, very few Mexicans are shown to be rich or have money. And trust me, there's a lot of neighborhoods in Mexico that have a lot of money and people that have a lot of money, and they did it legitimately. But most of the people in movies and TV that have money, most Mexicans, they made it illegally in these scripts, in these stories. They make it look like Mexicans can't be business owners without being a bad guy or breaking the law. And this changes how the world sees Mexican people. But the more that Mexican people start to write scripts or direct the movies, that crime actually gets cut in half. Those statistics about Mexicans being a bad guy goes down 50%. So there is a silver lining to this story. So that proves that Mexicans as a community isn't the problem. The problem is when other people tell the stories. Imagine you were a kid and you had a box of crayons and your teacher tells you that to color in Mexico, right? But then she stops you before you start and tells you you can only use the brown and yellow color. That's exactly what Hollywood does in their movies. What happens is once you cross the border in these movies, the grass disappears. It becomes sand. The sky starts to turn yellow and smoggy, and everything becomes this dusty desert. They make it look like it's desert from the bottom of Texas all the way to the bottom of Mexico, which isn't true. Mexico is highly diverse. There's so much to see here. There's so many different places. It's not just desert. And the truth is that Mexico is one of the most diverse places on the planet. It has jungles, snowy mountaintops, and huge cities, all in one country. And Mexico City is one of the biggest and most modern cities in the world. It has skyscrapers, huge parks, and more museums in this city than any other city in the world. Hollywood uses that yellow filter, that sepia filter, on their movies to make Mexico look old, dirty, and polluted, and just a place where there's no law or rules. And trust me, there's a lot of laws and rules here. Even when Godzilla is placed in Mexico, there's a yellow filter applied. While the movies just show dust and dirt, Mexico is the leader in technology and art. Millions of people every day go to high-tech offices here. And these huge skyscrapers that never make it into Hollywood movies. When a place looks dirty, wild, and out of control, it's easier to tell a story about war. Like if they're telling a story about a place that is a wasteland, a place where nothing grows, it's actually a trick on your brain. It makes your brain think like, oh, there's no police there. There's no schools there. There's no normal people there. No good normal people. And then when they paint this whole country as a desert, Hollywood's trying to tell you that war and poverty is the only thing that exists in Mexico. It erases everyday normal life in everyday normal big cities and small towns because it's harder to tell a bad guy story in those environments. You can't tell that story in a beautiful city like Mexico City or Guadalajara. Hollywood hides the real facts so these myths stay alive so they can make more money. Mexico is a place with 130 million plus people that live a life more colorful than that yellow filter that Hollywood puts on them. You ever play a video game where there's a character in the background that you can't talk to or interact with? That's what Mexicans are to Hollywood movies and TV. They treat them like background characters that only exist in the background. Like in those movies, if a Mexican person gets hurt or something like that and someone's there to save them, they don't tell a background story. They don't tell them that they have a dog, where they live, if they're married, or that their dream is to be a tech CEO one day. They show none of that. They treat Mexicans like props, like furniture that's just sitting there. And it's not right. Mexicans are way more than props. They're a special type of people that deserve more respect. And usually they're only there to make the main character look better, look smarter, look stronger. What this is dehumanization, which means Hollywood pretends that these people aren't real people. They're not people with hearts and souls and minds, that Mexican people just belong in the background. Hollywood acts like Mexico's a broken place where they need an outsider, usually from the US, to come and save the day. Like an American soldier or a DEA agent, just like in Narcos. A rogue agent from somewhere in the US that doesn't want to listen to the rules. Because here in Mexico, there are no rules. But everyday, regular Mexican people that are activists, journalists, and everything in between are trying to make a difference here. They're the real heroes. And those people are completely ignored by Hollywood because that's not exciting enough as a guy with a gun causing trouble. But here's the thing. Mexico doesn't need to be saved by the USA or anywhere else. It can help itself. That's the truth. There are so many Mexican actors that can do so much, that are so talented. They can be smart, funny, and even romantic. But what Hollywood tells them is if you want the job, you have to be the criminal. This is textbook typecasting. Typecasting at its finest. And get this, many Mexicans that play in these movies and TV aren't even Mexican. They're from somewhere else. I'm sure that Mexican people want to show what true Mexico is to the rest of the world. And I'm sure a lot of them are tired of hiding behind this bad guy mask. It's kind of like having a costume that you can never ever take off. When you watch these movies, you don't really think about how these lies hurt Mexico and Mexican people. It never crossed my mind in the past. Maybe I was just ignorant, I don't know. But here's the truth about this beautiful country. Did you know that in 2024, Mérida in Mexico was the second safest city in North America? Even safer than most US cities. And the way that movies affect real life is real. The movie James Bond Spectre had James Bond running through the streets of Mexico City, and he was running through a Day of the Dead parade, which never existed before the movie. But since after the movie, people came to Mexico City looking for this parade, the city decided to put it on. So imagine what else it could change in people's minds. I mean, at least that was a positive thing about it, because people really enjoy this parade. But what about the negativity that has been said in Hollywood movies for years now, and how that could really affect real life? When we only see one type of character that's cast on movies or TV, we forget how big the world actually is. If Hollywood only shows Mexicans as the background characters or bad guys, then the rest of the world forgets that Mexico is just made up of everyday normal people like the rest of the world. So if you come this far in this video, I'm sure you liked it. And I have more videos just like this one, like this right here. This is 8 stereotypes that Americans believe about Mexico that are completely wrong. Click it and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.